Hello there, welcome to week 4 of Musi 260. Damien Goundry here again, and this week we're going to be looking at understanding beats and percussion in electronic music. This week we're going to look at 3 different genres reasonably in depth, but most of all we'll be looking at house music in depth. We'll also be looking at hip-hop, and we'll also be looking at breaks. So let's just let me talk to you a little bit about the beats and that are used in electronic music. Now, a lot of the styles of dance music, particularly house music, hip-hop and breaks, they use electronic beats in combination with acoustic sounds, often loops of humans playing rhythms, and they're laid on top of electronic beats. So first up we're going to look at house music. House music is the synthetic love child of disco, and a lot of the different genres of electronic music have their roots in early house music, which in itself has its roots in gospel, Afro-Caribbean, R&B, soul jazz, and even traditional African music. So let's have a look at some straight up house beats, and then we'll add some loops from live percussionists and see how they interplay with the straight up electronic beats. Here in front of us we have an empty MIDI clip. When I say empty, the MIDI clip doesn't have any MIDI information in it whatsoever at the moment. This MIDI clip is set to loop at 1 bar, and our grid is set at 16ths. So even though I'm working in Ableton Live, if you're working in Logic or Pro Tools or any other type of DAW, you'll be able to quite simply set up a MIDI session just like this. So into this MIDI is attached to a drum machine. I'll just show you that. So here's our drum machine here. We have a couple of our basic elements. And a few vocal elements as well. So let's have a look at our MIDI clip again and see how we would build a basic drum beat for a house track. So a simple 4 on the floor. So here's our kick. Let's drop a kick in, 1 on every beat, and let's get that playing. Terrific. Here's our snare. Here's a second snare. Let's drop a snare in. Two snares in. So 1 on the 2, and the other one on the 4. So the 2 and the 4. Now we'll also need a hi-hat. So here's a hi-hat here, and we'll pop that here on the 1.1.3. Now we have the very familiar basic house track or rhythm that we've heard many times. So as you can hear, that's pretty straight up. It's all hard quantized to our 16ths. I can add a few other bits in pieces in here. Try and make this a little bit more interesting. Let's experiment with that. Now you will notice already just those a couple of little vocal samples there that are playing there just instantly give the track a little bit more of a skippy kind of sound to it, rather than being that straight up mechanical 1 2 1 2. So for a lot of house tracks, that might be the very basic of the rhythm that's going to be used. So I've already added a few extra percussion loops now for our track. So here's one here. This is like a little tambo kind of percussion. This next one here, little conga beat there. Next up, some little hat type sounds, or a tambo hat, a tambourine hat combination. So these three elements, these three percussion elements that we've got here, these were played in by human percussionists. And if we zoom in on our sample here of our loop, we can see that even though they're close, some of these points here where our percussion hits are coming in, they're not dead on to the grid, so to speak. You can see here's the 1.2 here, and we're behind the beat there. 1.23, and we're a fair bit behind the beat there. So let's listen how these extra percussive elements sound when they're with our straight up electronic beat. So even straight away, just the basic shaker there gives it a little more groove. So this way of laying down beats where you have a traditional or a recorded human rhythmical element alongside electronic beats is very, very common in house music. When you lay that up against a bass line, even a very simple off-beat bass line, so if we go a bass line that's off the beat of the kick, you'll find that that can be very, very effective. So let's have a listen to a little bass line clip that I've added in here. So very, very simple bass line, A minor if anyone's wondering, and it will just play off against the beat of the kick drum and the rest of the rhythm. So the percussive elements are syncopated against that main beat. Here's a definition of syncopation if you're not sure. And let's listen to what they all sound like together. So the syncopation adds that movement to the very straight up on the grid electronic beats, and then that plays off against the bass line, which gives us that rhythmical ebb and flow, which is very, very common for house music. I think I've got a little bit of a vocal hit on this track here. So just adding that that new element really gets into the circular nature and the almost trance-like depth to which we can move into the groove for house music. So so that's our basic house music beat, and we can hear once again all these extra elements that are not hard to the beat, that are not hard on the grid. Here's our 1.3 here. Here's our conga beat coming in before the beat. That would rush the beat on a little, give it a little bit of urgency. Here we are in front, and so that's why when we're hearing that conga beat, it's pushing forward. So that's our basic house rhythm. Next up, let's look at some hip hop. So once again, we've got a 1-bar loop set here in our MIDI clip, and we've slowed our tempo down to 100 beats per minute. I probably should have mentioned before that the tempo for house music is generally between 116 to the mid 130s. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule. So here we are with hip hop, which is generally about 90 to 110 beats per minute, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Rules are meant to be broken, right? Okay, so here we've got a slightly different kit. Let's have a listen to that. So a fairly booming kick drum. Once again, 2 snares. And here we've just got a little ride sound there. So this time our grid is set at 30 seconds, so we can see our grid here. For Ableton users who are interested, to change the grid, the key command is Command 1 to make it smaller, Command 2 to make it bigger. So you can probably see it moving around there. Okay, we'll just stick on 130 seconds. Okay, so as you can see, our beat isn't as uniformed as it was in the house track. So I'll just turn those ones off, and let's listen to our kick pattern. So quite different to our previous house track, which was the 4 on the floor beat. So our snare though, however, is pretty much what we were expecting before. So with the more traditional hip hop, the snare kind of holds us there, heavy on the 2 and the 4. And just turn our extra snare on. The snare's got a bit more room there, and then with our ride, it's pretty rhythmical and pretty regular. Now I'll just make a copy of this loop. So here it is. And one thing that's common in hip hop is for the snares can sometimes be a little lazy. So I'll just bring those back behind the beat a little bit. So if you listen carefully, you can hear how that gives us a lazier feel to the track. Or let's push those forward and see what that sounds like. So pushing the beat forward gives us a bit more urgency to the beat. And same with our kick drum here. We can move that kick drum around. Doesn't necessarily have to be placed there. Pop another one in here. Turn a few off. So once again, it's our snare that's our anchor that brings us back into the rhythm there. Now, hip-hop is well known for stealing funk breaks. What's he talking about? Brakes on a car? No. What we're talking about is the break that, in a term that some people may be familiar with, the middle eight kind of section, from old soul and funk records. So what would happen is that those sections of records would be sampled and looped up for rappers to rap over. In a little bit about hip-hop culture here. When the DJs in the late 70s, early 80s were holding block parties, for example, they would play a funk record, and when they got to the bit where it was just the drummer playing the parts, they would have 2 copies of the record, and they would play the 4 or 8 bar section of the drummer drumming and then flip to the other record. So basically extending that section, so just playing that over and over again. So when samplers came out, the DJs were very excited because suddenly they could take a digital recording of that break and have that play for a whole song while a rapper rapped over the top of it. And hip hop was born as a credible art form. Anyway, so here's a break from a real drummer. So that's the kind of break that funk break that DJs would look for, that they would like to use with their hip hop tracks. Also, sometimes just a nice little hi-hat loop as well. So once again, we can hear what is some fairly sweet syncopation with a regular rhythm, or against a regular rhythm. Let's listen to that with the metronome on. So you can hear how that moves and adds interest to it. Then we can join those together. So you can hear how that's quite funky, and that moves around, plays on the beat a little bit. Once again, we're down to not harsh quantizing with these drum breaks. They're not exactly super tight on the beat. So let's listen how that sounds against our beat, which is from our electronic section, our programmed beat. So that's a fairly heavy traditional type of hip hop beat that we would hear. Now, as well as just playing the breaks straight up, one of the techniques that was used a lot by early hip hop producers was to start the loop in different sections. So if we have a look at this version of the loop here, you'll see that I'm starting this loop on the snare. So this is our start point here. So we're starting on the 1, 2. So on the 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the 2, we're going to start this beat. So I've also got another one here which is starting right off the beat. So just before the 3. So that should give us some interesting variations of the pattern. So let's just listen how that sounds. So here's our spot where everything's starting from the same spot. Now I'm going to play around with these other clips, starting in different sections, but still sitting on the 1 of the electronic beat. So you can hear how that variation on the rhythm of where that actual loop is starting adds interest to the track. And that's essentially how a lot of hip-hop, more traditional early hip-hop beats were made. And of course, as time has gone by, those kind of methods have been changed, flipped around, reorganized, and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of very, very famous soul and funk breaks that have been used by different DJs and DJ producers over the years. The first one, which is very common, is the Amen break, which was not only used for hip-hop but also for jungle and breaks and lots of other styles of music, and also is Funky Drummer by James Brown. So that's been used again and again. Very famous hip-hop artists such as Public Enemy and NWA have all used these breaks to great effect. So I've included in the links a couple of documentaries about those breaks, and it certainly would be worth your while to watch those documentaries. So here we are, back to a hip-hop beat. And next up, we're going to have a quick look at drum and bass, or jungle, or just breaks. Here's our last genre that we'll be looking at in terms of rhythm within electronic music production. We're going to be looking at jungle, drum and bass, but generally these techniques are for all the break style genres that we can think of. So let's have a look at what we've got here. So once again, we've got a loop here, we've got 2 bars here, we've got some basic elements that we would like to hear. Snare, some percussion, some hats. Okay, so much like hip-hop with breaks, we're going for that heavy on the snare kind of vibe. The snare kind of holds that together, but this time you'll notice that the snare is on the 1 and the 2, and here we've got it on the 1.4 and then back on the 1 again. Meanwhile, our kick we've got here. Let's just have a listen to these. So it's our 1, 1, and here at the start of our second bar that's keeping us kind of in time there, with our other kick being off to the side here. Let's throw the snare into the mix and hear what that sounds like. So our snare is keeping us right on track there in terms of where things are sitting in the process of the loop. Let's hear some variations. So that percussion section just here, fairly loose, coming in before the beat and after the clear beat here, coming in on a half there. So try to give us a little bit of a funkiness, you know, off the straight beat there. And so lastly there we've got a very straight up hi-hat. Yeah. Now the interesting thing about hip-hop is, about jungle and drum and bass is its close association with hip-hop. So remember the beat that we were using before at 100 beats per minute? Well, here it is again at 174 beats per minute. So it was very, very common for jungle drum and bass producers to use those same breaks that hip-hop producers had been using in the early 80s to create their extra rhythm for their drum sections. So let's hear what they sound like together. And in the same way that the hip-hop producers would start the drum loop on different sections of the loop, we've done the same thing here. So these are exactly the same loops and starting in exactly the same places as with the hip-hop, only at 174. So 74 beats a minute faster than we were using them before. So we can play around with those beats at this tempo as well. Now the other interesting thing that we often hear in drum and bass breaks is half beat time as well. So what I've done is I've taken our same break as we had before, but I've stretched it out over 4 bars. So let's have a listen to what. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like. So let's listen to that all in case together. So you have this beat playing the half time, this beat playing the fast tempo, and here's our sequenced beat playing along as well. Let's listen to those on their own. And with our sequence beat. So in a nutshell, there's drum and bass, or the break style programming. Yeah. All right, I hope you've enjoyed today's lessons. Be sure to have a look through your readings. There's a couple of documentaries, and there's a great Linda tutorial as well. All right, thanks again for watching. My name's Damien Goundry, and I look forward to communicating with you on the forums this week. Okay, thank you.